Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep. Thanks.
All right. There's that show. Okay. So as we've been talking about this entire hour, we're very excited that our gene curations are now able to be pushed live to the clinicalgenome.org website. So I'll spend the last few minutes of this call just kind of talking to you about just practicalities of that process. So in case any of you weren't already aware, clinicalgenome.org is really the public space for our overall project. And again, the goal of this project is to create a publicly available knowledge base of clinically relevant genes and variants for use in precision medicine and research. And when we say public here, remember that the public includes not only genetics professionals, but also non-genetics professional and conceivably anyone. Our website is public, anyone can access it, so really anyone could be looking at the information therein. So as we've mentioned somewhat throughout the call is that previously the way that we got our gene curations onto the ClinGen website was via a manual process. So maybe you yourself have done this, or maybe the coordinator for your group did this for you, but somebody had to actually go into the website and hand enter your curations previously. And as you can imagine, this is a very time-consuming process. It was subject to delay, so maybe your group approved 2 curations today, but I don't have time to enter it until next month. So, this information is just sitting there and the public is not able to get access to it until the person that you designated to enter it gets around to entering it. And there's also possible errors, as with anything that humans are touching. Like if I'm sitting here trying to type in numbers that are on a spreadsheet or something like that, I could very easily transpose a number or type something else in wrong, and we don't want that if we can avoid it. So now our curations are entered into the GCI and can be published to the website upon approval. And when you do this, the process that Matt told you about earlier in the call, they'll be available on our website within minutes, so that's great. I'll go through some general notes about the website publication process, and Matt did say some of these, but I think they bear repeating because they are very important. So please remember that the publish feature is not going to work if you are using a free text disease term. So Mondo terms are required for publication to the website. Mondo is absolutely able to create a new term for you if you truly need one. We've done this, a couple of us have done this a few times by now, so if you're new to it, just feel free to email us at ClinGen@clinicalgenome.org and we can help you through the process. Really, really carefully consider the consequences of using a free text term. So if it's something you just simply don't like the phrasing of the Mondo term, but it's basically the gist of what you want, I really would consider using it and then maybe following up with the Mondo team about what your issue is with the particular term. Again, they're very, very nice people, very easy to work with. They're open to suggestions. But please, just think carefully before you choose to use a free text term, whether it's truly necessary or not. Also note that there may be a delay in publication to the website when you're using a brand new Mondo term. So if you actually went through this whole process, you've got a brand new term that you're happy with, maybe just let us know, again, at that general email address that you're about to do a curation with this. We can keep an eye on it and make sure that, we're getting the right identifiers and it's publishing as you expect it to and things like that. Another general note is just to pay attention to any curations that you previously entered using the manual curation process, that thing that we've been referring to as Gene Curation Express. As you may imagine, we do need to reconcile any curations that were previously manually published to the website with new information coming from the GCI. And moving forward, the GCI is going to be the source of truth. So if there was something on the website before, and now the GCI is telling the website, hey, I have something new for this gene, we're going to accept what's coming from the GCI and replace what was already on the website. So our first pass at this process, a manually entered website curation will be replaced with information from the GCI if and only if the gene name and the mode of inheritance match, and at least one disease term on the website can be mapped to the disease term used in the GCI. And that sounds all well and good, you know, on its face, but we've actually found out that, you know, this may not always be what the curator originally intended, so please just double check. And like one potential example, I believe, you know, one of our groups may have curated the gene MEN1 for an association to hereditary paraganglioma and pheochromocytoma years ago at this point, kind of while we were still sorting out our gene curation process and our lumping and splitting process. And when they did that and they wanted to enter it to the website, they needed an OMIM term, and the only OMIM term that was available to them, as you can see here, is the one that's associated with multiple endocrine neoplasia, even though that's technically not the disease that they curated on. Well, when this whole process happened, you know, now there's a curation in the GCI officially for multiple endocrine neoplasia. When the GCI sends over the message that says, hey, we've got a curation with this gene, this inheritance, they match. Look, your old OMIM term matches with my Mondo term. That's great. I'm going to replace it. But that's actually not what we wanted. So that's just one example. If you know that your group has old curations on the website and that this might be an issue, just try to take a look and see what's going on. If you notice anything unusual or that you don't intend, please just follow up with us and let us know. When you are ready to enter any old website curations into the GCI, again, kind of same thing, maybe just give us a heads up so we can be aware that something like this may occur and to pay attention to it. As we were just talking about with Jenny, the Gene Curation Express is now closed. All new curations must be entered into the GCI in order to be published to the website. Legacy curations will remain as is until they require any updates. So if you have an old curation on the website and you don't have any plans to update it anytime soon, it's fine to stay there. But the moment that you do need to update it, it's good practice to just go ahead and enter it into the GCI so that it can kind of fall into line with all of our curations moving forward. So again, Jenny was asking, you know, can we make just updates via the old interface to our existing curation, and the answer to that is no. We have made exceptions for papers that are currently undergoing the submission process, as for example, these human mutation papers that are kind of in the process right this moment. If this is you and you have not contacted us, please do so immediately after this call. But from here on out, we're going to ask that you use the GCI. So if you know you're going to be submitting a paper in 2 months, you're going to need to enter those curations in the GCI. We're not going to be able to use the Express anymore. So just as a reminder, who uses this gene curation information once it gets to our website? Well, first and foremost, other ClinGen working group members will be using or could use your information. And keep in mind, they may have no background in your clinical domain. So, for example, I work a lot with the ID autism group, and as you can imagine, a lot of our genes potentially touch on other genes from other groups. And so oftentimes I find myself looking in the GCI or on the website to see if someone else has done our gene and what they said about it. So I might be looking at your stuff. I have no background in, say, cardiology. I need to be able to read what you have written and come away with some understanding of it. Same thing for other genetics professionals. They may have no background in your clinical domain. Other medical professionals who may also have no background in genetics. Other scientific professionals, maybe basic researchers who may have no background in your clinical domain in genetics and or medicine in general. And while this is not our primary audience, always remember, I mean, anybody in the general public could be accessing our website, and they may have no background in any of this stuff. And again, while that's not our primary audience, I still think we need to keep this in mind, and I feel like everyone should be at least be able to access this information and come away with at least some kind of understanding of what we did. So how can we achieve this? Well, I highly recommend using those evidence summaries that Marina was just talking about. Those are so very helpful. You know, even if you yourself did a curation maybe a few months ago, and for whatever reason you need to go back and revisit it, if you are just sitting there looking at PubMed IDs and scores, you're not necessarily going to remember all of the ins and outs of that curation. And having just that little blurb there to jog your memory is exceptionally helpful. And if that's the case for you and your own old curations, imagine how helpful such a blurb would be to somebody else coming to look at your curation cold, having no idea all of the work that you did to go into that curation. So I find those really helpful, and again, those are not required, but we really, really encourage people to consider using them. You always want to be as clear but as concise as possible while still providing the necessary background information. It's always good to cite your sources, to writing complete sentences, to spell out any abbreviations the first time you use them. Please don't assume that they are common knowledge, and also, again, consider your audience. So, think about any other website that you visit, like maybe OMIM, for example. And I think one of the good things about that website, you go to that site, you're going to get a concise summary of what's going on with a particular gene or condition. If there's a piece of information in there that you want to know more about, they're going to cite their source, where to go back to find that original information. Think about how you would feel if you went to that site and you saw something just written sloppily or in non-complete sentences or using a lot of abbreviations. You didn't know what they mean. Your experience as a user with that site, I think, would be lessened. So I think we want to hold ourselves to similar standards. We want people to come to our site, feel that it's a professional, trustworthy site, and some of these things just go a long way in helping establish that feeling. So I think we saw a few examples of this, but currently if you go to the website and you see, and you're looking at information on a gene curation, you'll find things like the numerical point scores, the PubMed IDs that were used to establish those scores, and then maybe you'd see the words associated with whatever classification was given. And that's all great information. I'm glad it's there. It provides us some information, but if you're somebody who's just, again, coming to this website looking at this document, you would probably feel like you have to go back to these PubMed IDs to kind of truly get a feel for what's going on. This is not really something that you can just take and go. It's something that you can look at and say, oh, all right, it's definitive, but I still don't get a sense of what information went into this curation. So that's where that evidence summary comes in, and again, Marina showed an example of something like this, which is simply having this paragraph here. I feel like I can read it and at least come away with a sense of what was going on in this particular curation without necessarily feeling obligated to go back and reread all those PubMed IDs for myself. In the future, I think we're going to look to supplementing this even more on the website by including all of the information from the GCI evidence summary. So, whereas today you just see the points and the PubMed IDs, in the future you're going to see all this beautiful information that you see when you generate your evidence summary. So, just not just for that little paragraph at the end, but for all of your evidence, just really consider writing incomplete sentences, spelling out your thoughts clearly, because one day these things are also going to be on the website for people to use. And finally, just an example of what I mean when we're talking about the writing style. Like, think about what you would think if you went to the ClinGen website and you saw something like this as an evidence summary to support a gene disease curation. It's using abbreviations. I don't know what that abbreviation means. It's incomplete sentences. It sounds very sloppy. It's referring to things that if I'm not intimately involved with ClinGen, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's not citing any sources, and overall I just feel like it looks really unprofessional. And that is compared to what's here on the right. I'm not going to make you sit here and read this whole thing, but suffice it to say, let me just, spoiler alert, tell you that they've spelled out what all the abbreviations mean before they use them. They tell us what exactly we were looking for here. They tell us the date. They cite the sources. They tell us any relevant information that we would need to know to understand this summary, and it looks just a lot cleaner and more professional. So that's all I really had to tell you guys today. I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
That's great. Thank you, Erin. Any questions for Erin? or any general questions about the GCI or the VCI? Well, we have Matt and Scott and Tristan on the call too.
Oh, hello. This is Danny.
Hey.
Did you describe how maybe you would put that optional summary at the end actually in the evidence summary, like at the top where you had that box?
Yeah, let's see. I think I have now this is actually the real curation website, so I don't want to touch anything on here and mess it up, but I think if I go to classification matrix, so after you've entered in all of your information, you go to that classification matrix button at the top, and it shows you, all of the pieces of information and how many points you've generated thus far. And then there's this little box at the bottom, and the summary Marina was talking about will go here in this box called evidence summary.
Right. I was thinking, like, since we were trying to get the evidence summary, not necessarily maybe the classification matrix too, but the evidence summary, as opposed to having PowerPoint slides, we would have that box where the evidence summary is with that paragraph, like at the top of the page on the evidence.
Do you mean on this
Yes.
document?
Exactly.
It should show up there. Oh. So when you're just doing an evidence summary, it hasn't been saved, I believe, Matt, no. I think what you have to do, and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, you have to save it. And if you do, that little blurb will show up at the top. Is that right, Matt?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So that at the top of the evidence summary, it will be saved and you'll be able to view it there. So at any time, you'll be able to go and view it or save the PDF, and it will have the evidence summary at the top. It's just that in this case, it wasn't saved. In fact, there's an example. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so now I went in and clicked on the one that was saved, and you can see it looks nicer now. You've got the blurb at the top, you've got the tallied points, and then you've got the full extensive information down at the bottom.
Okay. I think the fact that it shows up here makes it as close to mandatory without being mandatory as you could get.
Yeah, yeah. And again, we're not trying to, be mean and make anybody do extra work, but I have personally found that these are so helpful when I'm looking at somebody else's work, or even, like I said, if I'm looking back at my own work. I don't remember what I was doing 2 months ago. I'd love to read these things, and it jogs my memory. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, now I remember what the deal was with this gene-disease pair.
Right. Like for many of these, we end up having to do a background evidence page in a PowerPoint anyway, so this could be instead of.
And really, one of the reasons that we developed this evidence summary is to hopefully alleviate some of the needs in the PowerPoint so that people aren't needing to create a PowerPoint plus enter stuff in the GCI. And for example, in the ID autism group, the way we use this is if we know a gene curation is or we assume it's going to be definitive, we'll have one of our primary curators actually go through the exercise, curate it. If they do come out as definitive as expected, they'll just send this via email to our group chairs. Then that way they can take a quick look through, okay, I see all the patients, I see the experimental evidence here at the bottom, that all looks good, summary looks good, and they can just approve it via email without us all necessarily needing to sit through a PowerPoint of a gene that we all know is going to come out to be definitive.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, Erin, this is Jenny. So I just wanted to mention also the issue with the segregation scoring and what we're doing with that right now when pushing information to the website, because the GCI is still using the old segregation scoring from version 4, although capping the points at 3. So we had talked about what to do in the instance where you do have a curation with segregation scoring and what to do with that as it gets pushed to the website, because the scoring may not be showing accurately on the website. So it sounds like just putting a little note in there currently until that's all fixed is what we need to do, right?
Yes, I think so. Just adding a note to that effect in the evidence summary so that it's clear. But that should be fixed soon, hopefully in the next release, not this little one that Matt was just telling about, but the next real one. Right, Matt?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you've seen the specs as well. We discussed them on Monday as well, that, you know, Jimmy, our developer, has spec'd most of those out now and implemented most of those. So they should be ready for the next release, which will be probably a few weeks from now, I would say.
Okay, great. So after the next release, we should be fine, but just to make sure that people are aware of that prior to the next release. Just making sure you check your segregation points and it's showing what you want it to show, and if not, you can just put a note in there.
And certainly, you know, this is a brand new process. We just, you know, after everyone working very, very hard on this, we just got this happening within the last week or so. So if you are publishing things to the website and it does not look the way that you're expecting it to look, please let us know. If you find any bugs or anything like that, just email us, and that would be really helpful.